Hi there, and welcome to Hi there, welcome to my first YouTube video. Don't let that scare you. Please hang around. Hopefully you'll find the content interesting. At least you click through, so good job. Yay for us. Today's video is more about take two. Wrong thing. Alright, take two. Take three. Take four. You do this. You make it look so easy in the videos. Hi, welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Daniel Allen. If you've ever used Photoshop before, you're probably aware that when you are applying filters, smart filters, to a smart object, they only give you one mask to use. So you can have sharpening and color correction and camera raw filter and all these different adjustments in your smart object. But you can only mask all of those together, whereas maybe you want the sharpening just to apply to a part of the image, and you maybe only want the tone curve to apply to just a part of the image. Now there's workarounds for all of this stuff, but there are some cases when it is nice to have more than one smart filter, mask for your smart filters. So guys, getting them all confused. Smart filter, smart mask, or smart object, smart filter, smart object, smart filter, smart, I guess would be a smart mask. Not too smart if you only get one of them, in my opinion. But there is a trick to get around that. So that's what we're here today to show you. And we're going to take this particular image. There's lots of ways to approach editing this type of image. What I'm going to show you right now is more to demonstrate how to get around having one filter for your one mask for your smart objects. I probably would not necessarily edit this photo in the way I'm about to show you, but this is just for demonstration purposes. So for today's example, we're going to be looking at this particular image. It's from a stream over in Western Washington. My kids took me there for Father's Day, and we had a blast. Had my photographer gear with me, so we took some shots, and the images are really, really cool. This one in particular, I really do like. It's a little bit blown out in the highlights, and some of the shadows are kind of dark. I'm not terribly fond of this highlight on this tree trunk. So, you know, probably a little bit of color correction needs to happen. So we're gonna pull this over to Photoshop, and I would normally do a lot of adjustments here in Lightroom, but we're gonna go to Photoshop for this, so I can demonstrate the issue that I'm talking about. I'm gonna open this as a smart object, which, if you're familiar with smart objects, they are just links back to your original photo in Lightroom. So you're not getting a bitmap output that you're editing. You're just editing the link to the photo in Lightroom. And that's important because the whole editing of a link comes into play when we try and work around this issue that we're having. So here we are with this image, and first thing I want to do is I want to bring down some of the highlights and boost some of the shadows, but I don't want to do it for the entire photo. I just want to do it for part of it. So there's ways of doing it in Photoshop, but I'm going to say let's apply a camera raw filter to it, because then I can show you what I'm talking about, and that'll be really easy to show you that way. So we're going to go to camera raw filter. And here we are. I'm going to pull down these highlights, and I'm going to boost up the shadows. There we go. maybe even a little bit more, and I'm going to say okay. Now that loads as a filter for my smart object. And next, let's go ahead and apply some sharpening to it. Let's do an unsharp mask. And I want to sharpen right around here in the rock area. And let's see. Definitely don't want to over sharpen. I'm going to pull up the radius until I start seeing the level of detail that I want. There we go. Because if you have the radius too low, you're going to start sharpening noise, and you don't want to sharpen noise. So play with the amount slider just a smidge here. I'm probably going to go a little overboard on the sharpening just because I can always dial it back a little bit with the masking. So I'm going to say okay. And now you see that I've got two filters applied to my smart object. But there's only one mask on the smart filter. So if I wanted to come in here and let's say I don't want the camera raw filter on the rocks, I can paint that away. If I flow to 100, let's see, and soft brush, I can paint that away here. But now I'm also losing the sharpening that I put in there. And similarly, if I don't want the sharpening back in here, I can paint that away, but then I also lose the camera raw filter that I put in there. So we're kind of at a bypass here. And that's where my trick comes in. So I'm going to go back up in my history to right at the camera raw filter, which is right here. Now for the camera raw filter, and I'm going to apply the mask settings just to where I want the camera raw filter settings to be applied to. So I'm going to drop my brush opacity down a little bit here, and wrong way. I'm going to invert this filter actually. So click on the filter and Control I or Command I on the Mac, I think it is. I'll get more used to the whole Control and Command as I go further in these YouTube videos, but pretty sure that's what that is. And now I'm going to just paint in where I want that camera filter to be, because I don't want it everywhere. I do definitely want it back in here. Recover some of these blown out highlights a bit. There we go. And remember that if you're going to do something in the background and you have reflections, you want to make sure that you do the same thing also in the reflections as well, because it won't look realistic otherwise. So if we remove the blown out highlights in the background, we have to do it in the reflection. So make sure you do that. Bring in just a little bit through here, recover some of this. Not a ton, just a little. There we go. Now that highlight on that branch looks a lot better in my opinion. So if we press the Alt key or Option key on the Mac, I might have that backwards, I'm not sure. I apologize if it is. You can see I've only got parts of the camera filter showing. And that's exactly what I want. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click on the layer, and I'm going to say convert to smart object. Now what that's going to do, if you remember what we said earlier about smart objects being a link back to their image in Lightroom. So we have this one that we're working with now that is a link back to the original one in Lightroom. Converting it to a smart object is going to actually create a new link, and it's a link to this particular one that we're working with this camera raw filter with the mask applied to it. So once it's done working here, you'll see that it's going to pop up, and so it'll be any minute now. Just take a moment or two and go get a cup of coffee. Yeah, that's taking forever. Later that evening, Okay, so now we're looking at a new smart object, and this one has all of the smart filter changes that we made in it, and also the smart filter mask that we made. So if we, and you can tell it's a smart object because it's got this little icon down in the bottom left corner, and if we double click on it, you'll see that this opens up into a new document. And it'll take a second here. There we go. And now we're back to what we had before, which was the original smart object with the camera raw filter and the mask on it. And if we wanted to make any changes to this, we could make the changes here, hit the save button, close it, and that would be updated in the new document that we created. And I should probably note this is not a new document per se. This is part of the original document. But let's go back to this thing that we opened up here, this original smart object. And I want to show you something that's kind of interesting. You might think that's kind of cool. If you hover over it, you'll see that it's got a PSB name on it. This is actually residing in your temp directory. So this is a temporary file that Photoshop has created for you that you can have access to the original image that you made. When you save it, it gets rolled up into the original one, that the master document that you create when you say open in Photoshop from Lightroom. So that's kind of cool. That means that, you know, it does actually live somewhere. So now back to this one. Let's look. Probably want to, let's do a sharpening. There we go. That was the other thing I wanted to do to it. Go to Unsharp Mask. And those were the settings I had before, which I said was okay. It's a little on the extreme side, but you know, I can mask that in and out as I want to. So there's the whole thing. And again, I'm going to take my brush. I'm going to keep the flow at about 43, close to 50%. And with a nice big brush on my mask, and you see my brush size going up and down like that. It's actually with my Wacom tablet. So I have a dial on my tablet. I'll show you guys my equipment one of these days. That allows me to just kind of scroll sizes up and down like that at will, which is kind of cool. And then I'm going to come in here and soften this through here. Soften these shadows. You definitely don't want to sharpen any shadows because that will potentially bring out more noise in your photo. So we're going to get rid of that. Probably along these rocks here. Too much along that. So we're just going to apply sharpening where we want. And it's always a good idea too if you have a thing of interest in your photo. Like this log here, I want this to be a little sharper because I think it's kind of interesting that it crosses across the stream like that, and I want the user to see that, the viewer to see that a little bit more. So, and then you also want to keep in mind that things on the same focal plane should also be as sharp as other things on the focal plane. So if I have this log sharp, I can't have the leaves in front of it blurry, so you want to make sure to sharpen those as well. Leaves in front, these rocks are in front, so I got to do that. There we go. Here. Probably not a good idea to have water sharp because it should be kind of blurry. There we go. And I can spend more time with this, but you kind of get the idea. This is a fast job of that. And now I'm going to say convert to smart filter, smart object one more time because I do want to apply one more global change to this. And now's a good time for me to do the gratuitous. If you like this video, feel free to give me a like and subscribe to me if you want to see more of my videos. I do content like this somewhat regularly, but I'm not going to spam you with stuff that you don't want to see or won't be interested in because what's the point of that? So you can even subscribe if you want, and then you'll get notifications when really cool stuff like this comes back on my channel. All right, now here we are back with the smart object that we just created. And let's go and let's see, one last thing I'll do. Let's do a quick color lookup. There we go. We'll just apply a color lookup to it. How about, and we can kind of scroll through these and see which one looks really good. Teal orange plus contrast. Nope, too much. Crisp warm. Ooh, I like what that does. Definitely too much, and that's going to be the case with all of these color lookups. If you've never used them before, they're super cool, but they are not intended for full strength. You've got to dial them back quite a bit, but you can get a real good feel for kind of what it does for your photo when it's full strength like that. So there we go. Yeah, I like it. All right. And I'll probably do this in a different video, but I'll probably come back in here in the really blown out areas and probably do some rays of light kind of filtering through the trees. I think that would be a nice touch on this. It's a little dishonest since there weren't actually any sunbeams coming through the trees, but there could have been. It was just, if it had been a little foggier or the air wasn't quite as clean as it was on this day, then that might have happened. So, a little creative liberty doesn't matter, right? So here we go, and I'm going to save it and close it. Another nice thing about doing smart filters on smart objects is that instead of doing the stamp visible and editing the new stamp visible layer that you did, it doesn't create quite as big of a Photoshop file because it's all based off of links and references, and really the only bitmaps that it creates are for the masks themselves, because the masks are a black and white bitmap that you're drawing, and that is what tells it where to apply the effect and where it doesn't tell it to apply the effect. And so you do have some size issues coming from the black and white filters, but that's it. So all of these high resolution photos, you don't get them stacking up higher and higher and higher. And if you look down at the bottom here, you can see that my document size is only 120 megabytes, which is really nothing. That's basically the size of the original file itself, versus some photos where I have agonizingly gone over and over and over them and making copies of different layers and doing liquefies and, sharpening masks and all of these other things. They can add up to, I've got some files that are a gigabyte in size just for one file. And so that's a really good bonus, I think, for this. Anyways, thank you for hanging through to the end. I hope you enjoyed the video, and leave a comment if you want. And if you have any questions, feel free to leave a comment for that as well. I do try and respond to as many as I can. And I look forward to seeing you guys at the next video. Oh my God. Yeah, this is my first YouTube video and it's over now. Can you believe it? I actually did it. Yeah, wow. Huh. I'm a YouTube sensation. Not yet. All right, everybody. Thanks, and I'll see you next time. Bye.